Okay, so the last thing we added to this were regions. And if we really wanted to care about regional differences, or we wanted to look at regions, it probably makes sense to just map them rather than dealing with random scatter plots, right? So up next, we're going to look at mapping things. And let's see, our guiding question now will be, can we map each facility's CO2 emissions? I'm going to go ahead and create a new worksheet. So worksheet, new worksheet. And I want to drag my longitude dimension onto columns and latitude dimension onto rows. And that gives us a beautiful map. Okay, so here I see one null value in the bottom right. Do I want to filter that out or show that at the default position? Any guesses? The default position here is latitude of 0 and longitude of 0. So if I wanted to show that at the default position, it wouldn't make any sense on the map. So in this case, I just want to filter that out. I'm also only interested in the continental United States. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag and select just those continental US data points. I'll right click on one of them and click keep only. The map should automatically adjust to show everything in the continental United States. Is anyone not here? Okay. Now, if we scroll over one of these data points, it only shows latitude and longitude, and it'd be nice if it said the facility name. So we're going to add facility name to this chart next. To do that, I'm going to grab my facility name dimension, and I'm going to add it to detail under marks. And when I do that, when I scroll over a data point, it shows the facility name. And actually, Clemson is around here somewhere. It's in the data set. So that's cool. Okay, let's try and distinguish between the different industry groups that we have. I'm going to grab that industry groups dimension, and I'm going to add that to color. So now we have a separate color for each industry group within the US. And finally, I want to see the sum of the CO2e emissions for each one of these dots. And to do that, I'm going to grab my reported CO2e emissions measure. I'm going to click and drag that up to sizes. I want the size of the dot to represent how much was emitted. So that's a pretty cool map. That shows the CO2e emissions of basically all these industrial facilities across the United States and what industry it's a part of. If we click on different colors in the legend, it will highlight just those entries. We can see that there's a lot of power plants that emit quite a lot. So that's pretty fun.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If I don't have the software and I export the output, will I be able to access this information? Like I exported the output and I send it to another laptop without the software, will it be able to?
No. You'd have to save it as an image. Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit more near the end. Yeah. Okay, so this is a cool map. Wouldn't it be great if I could filter to just look at South Carolina or just the Northwest? Let's figure out how to do that next. To do that, I'm going to work with these filters. So there's this filters box, and you can see there's already something in filters. And the reason why there's already something there is because we filtered out that one null value. So we need to filter out that null value, which is why it looks like longitude is in that filters. But I want to add another filter to that. I want to add state. I'm going to click and drag state up to the filters shelf. And for now, I want to include all the states. So I'm going to select all. I'm going to hit OK. And nothing has happened yet because I haven't filtered out any states, but that's okay. At this point, I'm going to click on this new state box within the filters. And I want to click on show filter. I want to show that filter as a legend entry. So when I click on that show filter, I've got this new list on the right side of the screen that shows all the states that are represented right now. And I can select and deselect specific states if I want to, and it will update the map accordingly. Now at this point, I can select and deselect multiple states at once, but I might want to limit it to selecting and looking at one state at a time. And we can change how we do that as well. At the top of this legend entry, where I'm going to click on the down arrow near state. And I'm going to select single value dropdown. This is the type of interface that I want. I want a single value dropdown interface for this state filter. And now we can update and select only one state at a time. So maybe I want to look at just Illinois or just Maryland or just South Carolina. Look, there's Clemson. How do you undo? Control Z.
Okay, send.
Yep. Let's go ahead and add another filter. Let's filter by industry groups. I'm going to take that industry groups dimension that we created. I'll drag it onto filters. Initially, I'll select all of them. And I'm going to click on that filter and say show filter. I want a legend entry for that. I'm going to click on the industry groups on the filter shelf. I'll show the filter. And now I can select between different industry groups. I'm also going to make this a drop-down option, single value drop-down. Now there's one more thing that I want to add, and that's the regions dimension. So I'm going to add a filter for regions. I'm going to click and drag that over to my filters shelf. I will initially select all of the regions. And again, I want to create a legend entry for that. So I'm going to click on region under filters, show the filter. And again, I want to switch this to a single value dropdown. Now I kind of want to, well, is everyone caught up right now? Oh, wait a second. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you have these different filters, right? And so take state, for example. I want to click on that under filters, and I want to click the little white arrow that pops up when you hover over it. And I want to click on show filter within that dialog box. And do that for all three of them. Okay, so now we have three different filters that we can activate on the right-hand side of the screen. I don't really like the order that they're in right now. I think region should be just above state and industry groups should not be in between them because that just is logical to me. So I'm actually going to take industry groups and I'm going to click and drag on the header of that legend entry. I'm going to just drag it down one to put it below state. So now we have regions and then states and then industry groups. Now there's one thing that's a little bit weird about these filters. Right now I'm looking at the Midwest region. So I have Midwest activated as a filter. But when I click on state, I can see all of the states in the US. And it really probably makes sense for me to only see the states within the Midwest region, right? There's a way that we can adjust that. So if we click on the drop-down arrow for state and edit that legend, near the bottom of the dialog box thing, there is a only relevant values button. So I'm going to click that only relevant values. So what that does is it shows only the relevant values for what has already been filtered within this data. So when I click on that only relevant values, we've got the Midwest region selected. And now when I try and select different states, it only shows the states in the Midwest. So with this maps, we can do things like look at the Southeast only power plants for South Carolina. We can really drill down into the data and look at just this. Before I move on, I'm going to name this map. Instead of sheet 6, I will call it facility emissions map.